Welcome to the Verum Epiphania podcast, a serialized reading of the audiobook Verum Epiphania. Episode 1. Verum Epiphania, or How Young Stefan Slayed a Mighty Dragon with a Cake on Christmas Eve. Prologue, The Strange Cake. Verum Epiphania? The young boy slowly sounded out the curious inscription piped in scarlet icing on the cake, trying to decipher its meaning. Stefan loved Christmas, and until this very moment thought he knew everything there was to know about it. But he had never seen a Christmas cake like this. Not only was the inscription strange to him, but the frosting was, instead of the snow-white frosting of the traditional British Christmas cake, almost black. Stefan was thoughtful, though, not to let his puzzlement show, because the baker was very pleased with his handiwork. He had baked the peculiar cake at the request of the illustrious barons for their Christmas party, and the barons were 3 very wise brothers, each of them a world-famous scientist. They lived cloistered away in a mysterious castle at the top of a mountain that towered over the village. Since the barons are 3 very wise men, Stefan now made up his mind, and I am only the son of a farmer, Verum Epiphania must be something very important to do with Christmas that I should learn. Eager for enlightenment, Stefan looked up at the baker with wonder and asked, "What does Verum Epiphania mean?" But enlightenment for Stefan would come only after a Christmas Eve fraught with perils that would test the very limits of his body and soul. Chapter 1. The Baker, the Lithographer, and the Haberdasher. It was a bitter cold Christmas Eve morning. Stefan and the baker, along with the lithographer and haberdasher, were clustered around a smoking burn barrel on the village's bustling town square. Each of the 3 businessmen bore a parcel, the lithographer a cylindrical shipping tube, the haberdasher a round hat box, and the baker a square cake box. Stefan gripped the handle of an empty wagon with a mittened hand. Only moments before, the 3 shopkeepers had converged breathlessly on the Royal Mail Office, which was also on the town square, to ship their parcels. But on this fateful day, they found the door locked, and a sturdy policeman posted out front. "Sorry, gents," the red-faced Bobby said huskily, his breath smoking in the chill air. "But there'll be no more parcels delivered today. The mail coach has been robbed. Or, more to the point, stolen. A gang of thieves dressed like Royal Mail couriers made off with the entire coach and horse this morning. They left the driver and guard tied to a lamppost. Can you believe that?" "Come again?" the astounded baker wheezed. "They nicked the horse and the coach? Why didn't the scamps just take the parcels?" "I asked myself that very question," the Bobby returned proudly, "and I think it's on account of all the coal people are sending as Christmas gifts." Now, you might have heard that getting coal for Christmas was a bad thing. But alas, such was not the case for the unfortunate citizenry of this fine village during this fell winter. You see, it had been a season of strange weather, with bitter cold and no snow. On top of this, there had been a coal shortage, brought about not only by the unnatural weather, but also by the strange goings-on at the Baron's castle. All winter long, flashes of infernal crimson light had played on the cathedral-like crags at the mountain's summit, and great columns of foul smoke had billowed darkly from the ancient fortress day and night. Whatever devilry was brewing at the Baron's castle, it was plain for all to see that it consumed vast amounts of coal. The village coalman, like most merchants in town, including the baker, haberdasher, and lithographer, depended on the Baron's patronage for their livelihoods. Needless to say, the coalman prioritized the Baron's orders. As the stores of coal were depleted, the price of coal had shot up, and the villagers had to pay the inflated price and cut back on Christmas spending, no less. Or freeze. So, as strange as coal for Christmas might sound to us, a sack of coal would have been just the ticket for many of the families in this village, who found themselves at the mercy of these singular events that seemed beyond their control. The Bobby tried to stamp warmth into his feet as he continued his story. Since the coal was too heavy to carry, it was easier for the thieves to make their getaway with the horse and coach. Anyways, like I said, the upshot is, there'll be no more parcels delivered today. Defeated, dispirited, and chilled to the bone, the sullen shopkeepers mumbled a half-hearted thanks to the bobby and retreated to the relative warmth of the burn barrel. As they thawed their stiff hands over the flames, the baker noticed a red and green paper chain caught up in the burning branches. "I'll be," he cried with disbelief. "They're burning the village Christmas tree." The trio turned, dumbstruck, to look at the large evergreen standing in the centre of the square. It had been gaily decorated by the village's schoolchildren with handmade paper chains. Sure enough, the appalled merchants could plainly see where its lower branches had been stripped clean away. "They're burning anything that's not nailed down to stay warm," fumed the lithographer, who was turned out in his best holiday suit, albeit underneath an ink-stained smock. "And even things that are nailed down. That's why I'm here." And then the lithographer explained how earlier that winter, the barons had hired him to design, print, and hang up, with nails, he stressed pointedly, around town, a broadside that advertised a once-in-a-lifetime chance to see the great Christmas star. According to the broadside, this new comet would be invisible to the common person, but for the privileged who could afford a 5 shillings fee, they could behold the comet's glory through a telescope the barons had mounted on the rooftop of the village's finest hotel. Only through the optical agency of this superior instrument, the broadside boasted, could one see this divine emissary sent from the heavens to remind us of the true meaning of Christmas. But lately, all the broadsides had vanished. When the abnormally cold weather set in and the price of coal skyrocketed, the lithographer lamented as he stared into the flames. The less fortunate tore down the broadsides and burned them for warmth. So, instead of printing more broadsides which would only be set on fire, the barons hired me to paint one large version of the broadside on the side of the hotel where their telescope is mounted. The painting had to be finished yesterday because the barons figured demand to look through their telescope would peak today and tomorrow. When I finished the painted broadside, I was to take a photo. The lithographer was also a photographer of it, and send it to the barons today for proof the painting was done accurately and on time. And that's what's in my parcel, a photographic print of the painted broadside. "It's ironic, isn't it?" observed the haberdasher, who was dressed seasonably in his best finery and top hat. "It's the barons' own fault their broadsides were burned, since they're the ones who hoarded the coal. And I've heard tell that the barons have heaps of coal at the castle. When the coalman made his latest delivery to my shop, overdue and overpriced, I might add, he told me why the barons needed so much coal, and you shan't believe it. The baron's servant who ordered the coal said they needed it, now get this, to keep the castle cool." "Keep it cool?" the frosted baker, who was still wearing his ingredient-stained apron, exclaimed. "The cheek! It's all a big joke to them, isn't it?" Now he lowered his voice ominously. "Those blokes are sitting on mountains of coal while we freeze. It would serve them right to not get their packages." "There it would," the haberdasher agreed with a heavy sigh. "But on the other hand, where would members of the apron brigade like us be without the barons? I'm also here this morning because of them. My parcel, like the lithographer's, was meant to arrive at the castle today. I'll be cleaned out for sure if I lose my best customer when this package doesn't arrive on time." "I'm in the same boat," the dismayed baker reluctantly agreed. "My package is also for the barons, and was supposed to be delivered to the castle today. I'd make the trip myself," the haberdasher offered. "But I can't leave my shop unattended on what I hope at least will be my best sales day of the year." The lithographer and baker admitted this predicament applied to them too. "Well then," the baker muttered grimly as he struggled to derive any warmth from the cheerless fire, "we're all up the flue then. Time to pray for a miracle." And it was right at that moment, just when things were looking very bleak indeed for the 3 shopkeepers, that they heard Stefan's wagon rattling over the town square's cobbles. Chapter 2. Visions of Holiday Splendor. Stefan and his parents did not live in the village. They lived on a farm on the outskirts of town. They were largely immune to the effects of the coal shortage, since they heated their modest cottage with wood and were self-sufficient in most other regards too. His mother had sewn the patched and darned clothes Stefan wore, a matching red coat and stocking cap of heavy wool, green wool pants, and black leather boots. Stefan's father had built the wagon he pulled. He had cleverly fashioned it so it could be converted into a sled when there was snow. Each morning during the Christmas season, Stefan would pull his sled, or wagon as was the case this winter, laden with cans of fresh milk from his family's farm and decorated by Stefan with garlands of evergreen foliage, to the village square. There, Stefan would sell the milk to confectioners, who had set up, along with a host of other vendors, festively decorated kiosks and marquees. These culinary artists would either cook their holiday fares on the spot with the milk, or rebottle it to peddle to busy holiday shoppers. But this Christmas, all the vendors had closed up shop after just a few days. Business had been too slow, they said, and blamed the sorry state of affairs on the unnatural cold and the price of coal. Now, in place of the festive kiosks, the mayor's office had erected a large grey pavilion to provide free coffee, tea, beef pies, plum pudding and, thanks to Stefan, fresh milk to those who were struggling. It was Stefan who convinced his parents that they should give their milk, now that the vendors had given up the ghost, to the less fortunate. After delivering his milk to the pavilion that Christmas Eve morning, Stefan had planned, with his parents' permission, to loiter about the village. He enjoyed taking in the festive Christmas decorations and striking up acquaintances with holiday shoppers who, despite their hardships this winter, always had time to exchange cheerful season's greetings. In addition to this merrymaking, Stefan planned to take in a free Christmas carol concert on the square, put on by a local choir. And then, on top of that, he planned to pay a visit to Father Christmas, who was scheduled to put in an appearance after the concert to hand out bags of free peanuts to the children. But besides just taking in these festivities, Stefan had also hoped, dressed as he was and pulling a decorated wagon, that he could add to them by reminding villagers on this special day of that emblematic figure of the holiday season. Father Christmas! Stefan was startled and delighted at hearing just what he had hoped for made manifest. He searched the crowded square to see who had done the manifesting until he spotted the 3 shopkeepers waving excitedly at him from the burn barrel. Stefan returned their wave and in a flash threaded his way across the square. "Merry Christmas," he said brightly as he approached the trio. "Merry Christmas," the businessmen echoed back, but somewhat distractedly, as they were busy sizing up Stefan's empty wagon. After some chattering about the piercing cold and a polite round of introductions, the baker quickly got down to business. "My colleagues and I were wondering if we could impose on your commendable and uplifting Christmas spirit this morning for some much-needed assistance." Stefan's heart soared at hearing he had successfully cheered the 3 men. Eager to spread even more holiday cheer, he replied without hesitation, "How can I help?" The 3 shopkeepers explained their predicament in the most dire terms, and then beseeched Stefan that he might deliver their packages for them. Stefan, of course, leapt at this happy chance to play the role of Father Christmas quite literally. He beamed at the shopkeepers, bowed and pledged in a dramatic tone, "At your service." Overjoyed, the shopkeepers let out a collective hooray and clapped the blushing boy on the back. "To whom should I deliver the packages?" Stephen asked with great formality to put on a show of how seriously he took Christmas merriment. "As luck would have it," replied the haberdasher, "all of them are bound for the same customer. And what's more, you'll no doubt have heard of them and their place of residence. Our parcels are for the barons at the castle." Stefan gasped with surprised delight. Every person far and wide knew all about the 3 barons and their mysterious castle. How could they not? Each brother was a world-renowned scholar. One was a philosopher, one a chemist, and the other an astronomer. Stefan had never known anyone who had so much as set foot on the barons' lands, let alone visited their mountaintop fortress or made their acquaintance. It was strictly forbidden to enter their realm, but now he would apparently have permission to not only cross their borders, but also to visit their ancestral castle, and on Christmas Eve no less. Visions of the holiday splendor that must await him at the castle swirled in his head. "I know the way to the castle," Stefan said as he struggled to contain his excitement. "But won't I need permission to travel through their lands?" "Ah, what a clever boy," the lithographer said. "Yes, you will need the Baron's leave to pass through their domain, and you will have it. The castle has its own Marconi room. As soon as you leave here, I will dash over to the wireless office and telegraph the castle to expect you." Stefan nodded, relieved but not surprised to hear the wealthy barons had their own Marconi room. In response to the boy's next sensible question, "Are the parcels fragile?" the shopkeepers decided it would be best not only to tell Stefan what was in the parcels, but also to show him. That way they could convey to him the importance of the packages and his errand. Chapter 3. The Cake, the Broadsides, and the Hats. The lithographer opened his parcel first. He recounted to Stefan the unfortunate tale of the burned broadsheets and the urgent need for the photograph to arrive at the castle that day. When the lithographer produced the photographic print from the shipping tube, Stefan immediately recognized the striking artwork from his previous trips into town. In the center of the broadsheet, behind the hyperbolic text, was a fantastical comet, its tail stretched dramatically across a starry background. In the bottom left corner were the three magi from the Nativity story, their faces upturned to the celestial visitor. In the opposite corner was the Baron's strange mark, a circle inside a triangle, nestled inside another circle. Stefan had heard sinister rumors about the symbol's meaning, but hadn't paid them much heed. When Stefan first saw the posters earlier that winter, he had rushed home to tell his father, who besides being a skilled farmer and carpenter, was also an avid stargazer. He had built his own modest telescope and observatory from scrap materials several years ago, so, quite naturally, he was excited to hear the news about the comet. In fact, when Stefan had asked his father what he wanted for Christmas that year, he replied, "To see the Christmas comet." You see, it had become a light-hearted family tradition for Stefan's parents to ask for Christmas gifts money could not buy. His mother's response that year was, "To have snow for Christmas." But now, thanks to the Baron's telescope, Stefan thought that his father at least could have his Christmas wish come true. But while his father was grateful for Stefan telling him about the Baron's telescope at the hotel, he told his son he was confident that, God willing, the comet would soon brighten enough for him to see. Now, prompted by seeing the illustration of the comet again, Stefan breathlessly disclosed these details about his parents' Christmas wishes to the shopkeepers. When the boy finished, the lithographer reached back inside his shipping tube, withdrew another, larger rolled sheet of paper, and presented it to Stefan. The boy unrolled the sheet and saw, much to his delight, it was one of the original printed comet broadsides. "But I thought all these had been burned," Stefan said, confused. "This is the last one," the lithographer said. "I had this copy at my shop and used it as a reference to paint the advertisement on the hotel. I was going to give it to the Barons along with the photo so they could compare the two, but I suspect your father will value it much more. Please, take it as partial payment for your help today." Compensation for helping the shopkeepers had not entered Stefan's mind. He simply wanted to help spread some Christmas cheer. It didn't seem right to him to accept anything in return for doing that. But at the same time, he had never given his father a Christmas present before, and the poster would make an excellent gift. So Stefan thanked the lithographer profusely for his gift and placed it in his wagon. Strangely, the haberdasher had also grown very excited at seeing the broadside. He said, much to the lithographer's chagrin, that he had not noticed the broadside posted around the village before, but now that he had seen it, it helped answer a burning question he had had about the unusual items inside his parcel. He quickly opened his hat box and brought out 3 bespoke hats. One was crown-shaped, one turban-like, and the other tall and pointed. All were made from richly hued silk and velvet, and embroidered in silver thread with the Baron's strange symbol. The haberdasher hadn't been able to fathom why the Barons wanted such fantastical hats until just now, when he saw the lithographer's broadside, for the hats the Barons had ordered from him were identical to the hats the Magi wore in the broadside. Because of this, the haberdasher now said, with a tone of growing certainty, the Barons must fancy themselves as modern-day Magi, delivering news of a divine emissary, the new Christmas comet, to the masses. Perhaps, the haberdasher also speculated, the barons planned to wear their hats during the castle's Christmas celebrations. Stefan and the other shopkeepers, after making their own careful comparisons between the hats in the box and the hats on the poster, heartily agreed with the haberdasher. "I suppose it makes sense," the haberdasher added. "The barons are, after all, three very wise men. But I didn't take them for the religious type. Truth be told, I heard murmurings they had demolished the medieval church on their land and the castle's chapel to boot, all to scavenge stone for whatever it is they're up to at the castle. Which doesn't seem religious-like to me." At this, the baker enthusiastically chimed in. "Neither does the type of cake they ordered. Their servant gave me the recipe. It's a new sort of chocolate cake the barons had read about in an American newspaper. It's called Devil's Food, if you can believe that." "Devil's food?" his companions gasped incredulously. They all agreed it was indeed an odd and somewhat blasphemous-sounding choice for a Christmas cake. But, on the other hand, the baker now contradicted himself, men of the flock they must be. Have a gander at this. Now the baker opened his parcel in a dramatic and flaunting style to show his captivated companions the strange cake inside. They bent closer to read the mysterious inscription, which was piped in Roman letters with scarlet icing. Stefan slowly sounded out the strange words, trying to decipher their meaning. Verum Epiphania? Eager for enlightenment about the mysterious phrase, the boy looked up at the baker with wonder and asked, "What does Verum Epiphania mean?" Stefan, the haberdasher, and the lithographer stared agog at the baker. The baker shifted, cleared his throat, and stared blankly back at them. After a long moment, the lithographer sighed and said, "He doesn't know." "Well," the baker floundered, "their servant didn't tell me, and I wasn't going to seem daft and ask what it meant. It was all very secret-like. The castle has its own baker, of course, but they wanted this cake kept secret as a surprise for their big Christmas party. But, since you asked, my humble opinion is that Verum Epiphania is a fancy religious way of saying Merry Christmas." The others exchanged skeptical looks. They suspected the words, which they all agreed were Greek and Latin-sounding, were likely religious in nature, but they had doubts about the baker's translation. The lithographer and haberdasher were busy chastising the baker for not asking what the inscription meant, and the baker was reminding them that they hadn't thought to ask about the magi, nor the fancy hats neither, when Stefan interrupted. "There's someone who might know," he said, and pointed out a black-robed clergyman in the square. He was helping a group of white-robed carolers set up a stage next to what remained of the Christmas tree. Stefan raced across the square and returned with the clergyman in tow. The shopkeepers crammed together around the barrel to make room for their new companion to warm himself. Chapter 4, Measures of Faith. After a round of hearty Christmas pleasantries and introductions, the baker showed the clergyman, who it turned out was a local vicar, the mysterious cake. Then, the proud baker held forth on the cake's origins, its destination, and his thoughts on the inscription's meaning. When the baker finished, Stefan, now on tenterhooks, asked the vicar if he knew what Verum Epiphania meant. "Verum Epiphania," the good-natured vicar replied, "doesn't mean Merry Christmas, but it is, I believe, a phrase closely tied to Christmas." "What did I tell you?" the baker harumphed. The lithographer and haberdasher shushed him. "Verum Epiphania," the vicar went on, obviously delighted to have such an attentive audience, means the true epiphany. And the epiphany is when the Saviour first revealed his divinity to the three wise men, or magi, in Bethlehem, after they were guided there by a star, the Christmas star. It's a part of the nativity story in the Bible. The Christmas story. The cake ties in nicely then, the lithographer said excitedly, with the hats and broadside. Hats and broadside? The vicar wondered aloud. In response, Stefan and the haberdasher showed the vicar the broadside and hats the barons had ordered, and pointed out how the Magi's hats in the broadside matched the real hats. Then the shopkeepers explained their notion that the hats the haberdasher made symbolized the Magi, and that the barons, who were revealing the new comet to the world, must fancy themselves as modern-day Magi. They concluded with the idea that the barons would wear the hats during the castle's Christmas celebration. "I'll grant you that the barons are 3 wise men," the vicar said, rubbing his chin, "but I hadn't counted them among the faithful, especially after hearing rumours about the destruction of the old monastery church on their land and the castle's chapel. But when you consider the cake's inscription, the reference to the true meaning of Christmas on the broadside, the hats, and the celebration they were made for, I must admit there must be some measure of faith in them. It seems the barons are not only keeping Christmas but also remembering its true meaning." The man of faith turned to look up at the Barons' Mountain. Its lofty summit was obscured behind a shadowy veil of dark smoke. After a moment's thought, he said with a cautious note of hope, "I wonder now if the strange happenings at the castle might have something to do with the construction of a new church or chapel, or maybe even a cathedral. Perhaps," he said, as he squinted to see through the shifting smoke screen, "they will dedicate a new place of worship at their Christmas party." At hearing these words, Stefan grew even more eager to get underway. What a wonderful party the barons must have planned, he thought, if they are dedicating a new place of worship on Christmas. "Still," the vicar added and raised an eyebrow at his diminutive congregation, "it would be unusual for the local clergy not to have heard about the construction of a new church. And then there's this." The vicar pointed out the baron's strange mark on the poster and the hats. "The baron's crest. Do you know what it represents?" Stefan and the shopkeepers shook their heads. "Depending on who you ask, it could be an ancient symbol of alchemy. Some think it is a mark used to summon and control a demon. Others suspect the baron's symbol is more benign, with the 3 vertices of the triangle representing the 3 of them and the overall design representing science. But now it appears we have evidence the barons are men of faith, so perhaps their mark is emblematic of the Holy Trinity? At any rate, it seems we might have reason to hope they are dedicating a new place of worship this Christmas." Then the vicar knelt and looked mildly upon Stefan. "Go with God," he said with great earnestness, "and may he protect you from every danger and bring you safely to your journey's end." With that, the clergyman rose and said he must get back to his duties. Stefan and the shopkeepers thanked the vicar for his insights and wished him a very Merry Christmas as he made his way back to his flock. Chapter 5. The Sewing Kit, the Christmas Stolen, and the Baklava. Now the haberdasher and baker, following the lithographer's kind example, offered to compensate Stefan for his help delivering their packages. Stefan politely declined, saying his help was his Christmas gift to them. Then the 2 merchants humbly asked if they could at the very least give him something for him to give to his parents, as the lithographer had done. Not wanting his 2 new friends to feel guilty, and very much wanting to give his mother a Christmas gift too, Stefan agreed. With the bright voices of the choir singing "O Come All Ye Faithful" and Little Town of Bethlehem in the background, the merry band made their way to the highly decorated haberdashery, also on the town square. From here, Stefan selected a portable sewing kit for his mother. Next, it was on to the festively appointed bakery, just a few doors down, where Stefan, after swooning from the rich aroma of baking spice cakes, picked out a powdered sugar-covered Christmas stollen as another gift for his mother. He hoped it would remind her of the snow she wished to see. For his father, he chose triangle-cut baklava arranged into a star shape. He hoped this would remind him of the Christmas comet he wished to see. Then the 3 merchants bundled Stefan's parents' gifts, along with the baron's parcels, into his wagon. "I envy you and your trip to the castle," the lithographer said wistfully when they finished, "where I'm sure Christmas will be well kept." "Agreed," said the haberdasher, "and in its true meaning." "And I think there is something else the 3 of us can agree on," the jubilant baker said to his fellow shopkeepers. "And that is that young Stefan here has been a godsend to us this morning, and no mistake. He has been a true hero to the Apron Brigade and a genuine Father Christmas to us all." Stefan flushed as the men gave him 3 ringing cheers and clapped him on the back. Then, after a final enthusiastic exchange of holiday wishes and farewells, the baker stepped back inside his shop, the haberdasher returned to his establishment, and the lithographer set off at once for the wireless office to telegraph the castle. Stefan, with visions of sugar plums dancing in his head, struck out for the castle with the gait of an excited pup. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Verum Epiphania podcast.